Sugar and Spikes is a science-backed and semi-sarcastic mental health podcast for a new type of business leader. Mental health concerns are occasionally addressed, but this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any condition, mental, physical, metaphysical, or otherwise. That's a job for your doctor or therapist, not a podcast. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
To the Sugar and Spikes podcast. I should know the tagline because it's my own damn podcast. A science-backed and semi-sarcastic thoughtcast for a new type of business leader. I'm one of your hosts.
The primary host.
I am something. I'm Dez. I am a serial content creator, constant rambler, and somewhat tired on this Tuesday afternoon.
I'm tired too.
Evening. This is in the evening. You guys, we never record this late.
We dedicated after working hours to recording our podcast. Oh, I didn't say who I was.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Tammy. I am a licensed psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
Need I say more? I don't think so.
No.
Nope.
Well, licensed psychologist and friend that got roped into being on a podcast with me every week.
That's right.
I'm going to fall back.
Are you taking a picture of me or the cat?
Maybe both if she'll get back in the thing.
Frankenstein!
No.
Here she comes.
Go see.
Here she comes. Hi, baby. With my wet, scraggly hair, I got caught in a stupid downpour. Yes, I did.
There we go. Well, that is a painfully accurate representation of what it's like recording. Yep.
Oh my god.
I think the best thing is, and I'll put this on the highlights on our Instagram, Sugar and Spikes Pod, is you can see I have my iPad up with our homepage so I could reference the goddamn tagline. Okay, but also, speaking of the tagline, hold on, let me take a sip and then I can get my microphone back.
Drink. No, I'm just kidding. That's our tagline.
That was our tagline. I was thinking about our tagline, which we change
all the time
within the phases of the moon.
It's cyclical.
And I was thinking, because I will say, Tammy and I have had a few topics that we've wanted to address, but it hasn't seemed like businessy.
Yeah.
It hasn't seemed quite appropriate, she says with air quotes.
Yes, air quotes.
One day we will remember to turn on a recorder.
Not today. I got caught in a fucking downpour. I looked scraggly.
I have no makeup on. I'm not saying today, but anyways, she says with air quotes, yes, topics. We've wanted to cover some topics. It hasn't seemed appropriate, but I was thinking about the tagline, and I was thinking about this. This is how branding and messaging works organically, guys. Take note. You're watching the magic happen.
No biting.
You're listening to the magic happen.
No biting. Sorry.
So, I mean, it's pretty clear, like a science-backed and semi-sarcastic thoughtcast for a new type of business leader. But I was thinking the about and in like, yeah, pretty much in the about. So like iTunes, maybe the web page, things like that. Like, aside from business saying, like we talk about everything that affects how you show up in business, and how you interact with business.
You
like
have a picture of us on
how
there?
you interact with it. Yes, you've seen this.
Have I? Oh, that's a good picture of us.
Yeah. Check out the about page on the website, sugarandspikespod.com.
Ooh, you even said we finished at the same undergrad.
Yeah. It's like she's never seen our website. Because I'm pretty sure she hasn't. Anyways, I was thinking about saying, like, the science-backed and semi-sarcastic thoughtcast for a new type of business leader, addressing all the things that happen that like affect when and how you show up in business, which really, I mean, it's unnecessary. I like our tagline, but I think like we have this view of what business is and things that affect business.
It's just biasy, right? Like that's what I was
Mhm.
thinking when you were talking. I'm like, okay, so we're exactly on the same page, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it just doesn't fit in our box of what we say business is.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's not true, and we talked about it a bit in terms of, well, what if we frame it up this way and stuff. But I think like if there's one thing I think both Tammy and I have learned this year, it's that, excuse me, people are people,
Yeah.
and people are people first.
Yes.
Before a job title, before a situation, before anything else.
Yeah.
And people show up to work,
Right.
and
Yes.
that's the driving force.
Well, yeah, and like we're artificially like trying to divorce people from
Mhm.
their lives. We're like,
Mhm.
here's work and business over here, and then here's your mental health over here,
Mhm.
and then here's this over here. But really, like, it's more messy than that,
Yeah.
right? Because what's going on in your personal life affects your business life. What's going
Mhm.
on in your business life affects your personal life. It's just that way because I
Mhm.
think people want to imagine that they don't bring work home with them.
Yeah.
Like we're taught that, right?
Mhm.
But that's like kind of BS, right?
Mhm.
Like that isn't true. You
Yeah.
bring shit home with you.
Yeah. I mean, like, boundaries are the way most people talk about boundaries are kind of bullshit,
I know.
And I think that that's doing a disservice to a lot of people because we're not trained in handling or like developing what boundaries mean for us and like navigating like the work life integration. And we've talked a bit about that,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I think all about having boundaries is there's kind of some trendy things in mental health right now,
Mhm.
right? Like mindfulness and like boundaries. I have to have boundaries.
Mhm.
But like boundaries looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think there's this kind of collective view of what boundaries are. And I
Mhm.
think they're not those things.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we sometimes I think when we try to have boundaries, we try to do it the way we think we should do it.
And I think we've talked about boundaries in kind of that same vein.
Yeah.
Like I definitely think like we've perpetuated some of this because there's some good in it.
Well, it's a good place to start, right? So like when you're learning how to do new things, especially if you haven't had boundaries, although it's not all or nothing, like but whatever your boundaries were at the beginning, and then now you're saying, okay, I'm going to work on boundaries. And a lot of times people think it means saying to a person, I have boundaries.
Like that no exercise we had to do.
Yeah. Like people say, I'm really putting my boundaries down with you. I'm putting my boundaries down.
Or like if I'm on vacation and I check email and something like needs to be responded to, I'm like, no boundaries.
Yeah.
But then what's doing me more harm? Saying no boundaries and then being like, God, I really should reply to that. Or if it's a quick 2-sentence response
Fighting me.
and pointing someone towards someone else who's working, say like, if you need anything else, contact so-and-so, which like your out of office should have that. But also, anyways, I digress.
But I get that. Yeah.
What's going to give me more peace throughout the rest of the vacation? Like,
yeah.
you
just
know?
answer it.
Exactly.
And then tell yourself, well, maybe I shouldn't do that again. So I'm not going to check my email for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Or even if you do, like people are imperfect.
Yeah.
Cut yourself some fucking slack.
Well, I mean, also, I think a lot of us have had the experience of having a vacation planned leading up to Tammy shaking her head. Tammy has not been on vacation in years.
Oh my God.
But many people have planned vacations because many people understand the importance of vacations, and have it actually like kind of butt up against a really big event or a really big meeting, or just like acknowledge the fact that life and business continue to come up.
Yeah.
So this idea of like a true disconnect, especially if like you're new to an industry and stuff, isn't fully possible.
Yeah.
She says with many asterisks.
Well, I mean, you like to think it's possible, right? So like I have certain roles that I have as a psychologist for things that have to be done, and they have to be done by a psychologist, right? And so like if I'm gone, they still have to get done. So either I can do them while I'm sick, because not vacation. I don't even know what vacation is. Or like it doesn't get done. But there are real life implications if it doesn't. So like even when I'm sick, I'm still doing work, but more limited.
Yeah.
You know, to the very essential duties I have to like do in order for things to function the way they need to. And so I think sometimes we have this idea that everything should be in like lanes, you know, like I'm on vacation. Like I get that, right? But like if there's a true emergency or something, call me.
Yeah.
Like I'll pick up. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So like what I was saying before is, ow, you're mean.
Yeah, she is.
You're mean. You want all the attention and then you bite me. Anyway, so like we like to think that when we put down our boundaries, if we feel like our boundaries have been violated over and over again, right? Or we haven't had a good work-life integration in the way we'd hoped. And one kind of area of your life is like taking over more than its share, let's say. So then when we start to do boundaries, like it always starts with like the pendulum swinging all the way over to the other side. And you're like, no, because I have boundaries. And I'm like, but how did that go?
Yeah.
It usually doesn't go well, because why would it? You wouldn't want to be told that either, but you're learning something new, right? So you have to give yourself the space and like the grace to be like, it's not going to be perfect. And then you can kind of tweak it until you land somewhere between those two like polar opposites. And very often we start with what we think we're supposed to do, right? Like this, almost like a collective, like pop culture kind of, like of how you do boundaries. And then you realize it's not really how.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Am I just rambling in a weird way that doesn't make sense? I don't know.
Well, I think like it really comes down to, you know, learning the different levels and stages of navigating your boundaries, which also comes with a certain level of self-awareness, you know, and situational awareness. I think of someone I knew who they were working on like a pretty big product launch, and things had been absolutely crazy in the times like leading up to it. They went on vacation, and because of like the craziness and because like it's corporate and you know that there are some things like if you're not an entrepreneur you can kind of quote unquote get away with depending on your job position and level and everything. They went on vacation and just like completely disconnected and didn't. And I think that like shows one level of, you know, I could check my email, but it's going to undo all of the things,
well,
you know, because it was so necessary. And then I think of a time where I was going through like a really big project and things were absolutely nuts, and then there was like a couple weeks where they kind of chilled down and I was able to decompress at home ish before going on vacation. And by the time I was on vacation, I was like able to check my email like in the morning, see if anything was burning down.
Yeah.
And I actually went into that trip like knowing I had at least one meeting scheduled, which I didn't mind.
Right.
You know? But that was because I had the self-awareness and the situational awareness to kind of juggle where like both ways are completely appropriate because different situation, different person, different all these things. And I think like that's where Society wants something just spoon-fed to them. No one wants to do the work to really figure out where they are.
Some people want to do the work.
In the situation. Like, very few people want to do the work. And that's why...
It's hard.
That's why so many gurus are like, here's your 10-step plan, and here's the roadmap. Like, that's why they get all the money and will never be Instagram famous, is because we're really putting a challenge in front of everyone and saying you can do better than just bringing in all these messages and, you know, kind of like replicating them.
Right.
Like, we believe that you have the capability to kind of like think through and filter out and be able to apply different learnings and different ideas at different points.
Well, and even if you take the 10 steps to hugely successful whatever, then okay, but that is a starting point, right? So then the work becomes to really learn and figure out how that's going to work for you. Because very often when we start something new, right, we do it the way we're shown how to do it, right? And then like tying shoes.
Yeah.
Okay. So my kids are learning how to tie shoes and not doing a good job. And so they started, and my partner and I don't tie our shoes the same way, which I didn't think was possible, but apparently is possible.
Oh, yeah. My husband's called me weird for how I tie my shoes.
Yeah. His way is weird. I'm like, I don't even understand what's going on right now.
I still tie my shoes like a kindergartner. Like, my husband actually called me out and he's like, that's how you learn, but what about like this? I'm like, when was like advanced shoe tying taught?
Do you do like the loop and pull the loop through?
No.
Okay. Well, that's how he does it.
Okay, no.
And it's like crazy pants.
No, I do the loop and I circle around and then
that's how I do it.
Okay.
The normal way.
Right? Apparently that's the baby. Like, that's the beginner way.
We're not advanced. Anyway.
5 degrees between us, but
Can't
beginner
tie
shoe tying.
So anyway, I'm trying to teach them how to tie shoes. And he's like, just do it this way. And so I'm like, I don't even understand what you're...
I don't get this.
I don't know what you're doing right now.
I know that method and I don't understand it.
No, not
like,
at all.
I've seen it. I'm like,
yeah, it's like loop and through the loop.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
like, no. So then my kids are having a lot of trouble with my method. And so they tied his method and they were like, oh, this works really well. And then they ended up with some weird hybrid of both our methods together, which are totally different. So I don't know how you mesh them, but somehow they have.
It does the job.
Right? So you start all of this. This is a great example. Totally applicable for adults.
Oh, yeah.
Of like, you start with this way, like do it this way. And then you figure out that exact way doesn't work and you refine it and make it into some hybrid of whatever it was before. Maybe it's totally different by the end, but that's the work of learning. And so when you have things just spoon fed to you all the time, I'm going to follow these 10 steps. Well, also, I think part of that is because it puts the blame on the other. Well, I did the 10 steps and I wasn't successful. Not my fault. That way just didn't work, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it can be like a lack of ownership because think about it. If they had continually tried to tie their shoes my way and they couldn't do it and they couldn't do it and they couldn't do it, they'd be like, oh, well, it's just your way that's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, because look, I can do it daddy's way. And I'm just like, okay. So it kind of takes some of the pressure off the person. But when you really accomplish it and they tie their shoes now, they're super excited.
Yeah.
They're like, look, I tied my shoe. And I wish I could get excited about these things. But like, I wish I could be as excited about tying my shoes as they are. But I'm not.
I have an app that'll help with that.
Yes.
I actually have an app that like I want to do a review of one episode.
I can't believe he critiqued your shoe tying. It's like the normal way.
It wasn't like a critique. It was like, you know, when you notice something about someone, you're like, that's interesting.
And somehow I'm not surprised that we tie our shoes the same way. Like no.
It fits.
Yeah.
What's really interesting about that, and I think like just applying this beyond shoe tying, is if you think about it, and I know, a lot of our audience are entrepreneurs, and there's this whole discussion around like university still like a good investment and things like that. I will say one of the things like it all boils down to kind of a learning curve or a learning cycle, if you
Right.
will.
Yeah.
Where if I think about undergrad, where your 100, 200 level classes are learn about all the theorists, and especially for folks in business, entrepreneurs, maybe you haven't done the undergrad or grad school thing. You
But
find
there's an
this
equivalent, right?
well, yeah, you find this wealth of information. The next thing you're downloading all of the 10 steps, you're following all of the advice gurus and
Oh, yeah.
doing all of the you're just it's this sea of information because there's so much information available. But where a lot of people kind of falter, and honestly, I think one of the biggest things I learned throughout both undergrad and grad school was how to kind of funnel information and
Right.
filter through and critically think
Like
about it.
critical thinking, if you will.
Yeah. Where it's okay, there are all these things, and like teachers are essentially like holding our hands by saying, you're not going to agree. Like some of these things aren't going to work with your worldview, your experience, X, Y, and Z, depending on your program of choice. But then we get, especially like thinking through the grad school process, you get so hyper filtered into this is what this theory means. These are the ins, these are the outs. Here's when to best do it. Here's when to not really do it, and maybe like refer out.
Right.
Things like that. Like you become a tried and true expert. And I think in terms of like business building and stuff, by that point, by the time you've gotten through 8 years of building a business, give or take,
Oh my gosh.
you come to find out there are these kind of voices and influencers, if you will, that stick with you and become your go-to, who have kind of like grown with you, and you've peeled away from others, things like that. But it really is this learning cycle, and I think it's something that we all need to be aware of because we're all growing, we're all learning something new. Like we were talking before we started recording, and Tammy was like, I feel like I need to just be done. And I'm like, yeah, but when you're done like learning, then you get bored and then you die.
Right.
Like we're all going through that learning process. Like you're gonna find out something about psychology and start to do all the research, and then like you're going to go through that process again.
Oh yeah, I just got a book and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, and I mean with marketing, like marketing stuff is changing all the time, and I'm always finding new websites, reading the list, and then distilling. But it's having the skills and awareness to not get caught up on the like wealth of information. Or like the breadth, I would say, like the vastness.
More depth, less breadth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you're in that sea of free information and on the internet and all these things, and I could go off about how like some books are good and some books aren't, and really like empirical like sources are really the only way to go. Not the only way, but
you can lie with statistics,
yeah,
and you can have less than like
I
stellar
know.
citing practices,
which is really where all of this comes into play of thinking about it with your situation and testing it out and trying things on.
And you're like, oh yeah, like that didn't work, but cool.
Yeah, like I'm sure that new intervention is going to work for someone else,
Not for this person.
Just like this dress is going to look really great on her and not on me.
Well, I think that's a really good example. Like you and I, our bodies are shaped very different. We're about the same size, but like the things that look good on me and the things that look good on you are different, even though we're size-wise the same. So like we have to adjust.
Yeah.
Right? So the thing that looked good on you, I tried it on. I'm like, oh, no. But then the things that I wear, you're like, not for me. Right? And that's fine. I think that's good. So there's good to have a lot of choice, right? But it's that filtering, that making it your own, that bravery. It is brave, in my opinion, to say, I'm going to step forward and here are my ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very vulnerable place to be.
Oh, it's terrifying, especially like as a marketer and budgets are on the line, and you know your KPIs, like your key performance indicators, are so painfully clear,
right? I know.
To like,
thank you, statistics.
The level of like if you're doing a good job or not, and saying here's the strategy we go with, and knowing that your ideas are going to face numbers.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, all of you folks in startup land know what I'm talking about, where there's no like prior playbook. And it's just, let's try this.
Yeah, but that's really vulnerable and exposing, right? Like, thinking about clothes for a second. I know for myself, like, I've worn cardigans, t-shirts, and jeans for just about as long as I've known you. I don't know, a long time.
Yeah.
And I never really stepped out of that box because I was like, what if people judge me? Like, what if people don't like it? And so it was a really big step for me to be like, okay, I bought this thing and now I'm wearing it. What do you think? And like, is it okay? Because like, I really like it. Do other people like it? And it's the same with business. Your business is like, you put like your blood and sweat and tears into it, right? And so you put it out there and then you're like, fuck, people don't like it.
Well, I mean, it's not just...
Or they might not like it. It's not even that they really don't. It just feels that way, maybe.
I mean, it's not only for entrepreneurs. I think that folks who work in any sort of job and get up to, you know, a certain level of experience and time within an organization, like when you write reports, you're putting them out there, and up until you got licensed, like someone else was signing off on them.
I'm like, I was just talking to you about that before we started recording. Like, I'm starting to realize that there's no one coming in behind me. There's no one like, I used to kind of rely on, well, another person is going to look at this and tell me if I'm way off base.
But at one point, like, even that was nerve-wracking because you were like, oh, is this going to be good enough?
Right.
And then it became comfortable, and now it's this other level of, so I think it's
this,
you know, there's always a level of, what if it's not good enough?
Right.
You know?
Or like, what if I make a total fool out of myself? Like, what if like the diagnostic information like leads me down this road, and then everybody's like, I don't know what fucking road you're on, like, but that's totally wrong.
Yeah.
But also that's like catastrophizing, right? Like, when is the last time anybody said that to anyone?
Well, and it's imposter syndrome, right? It's imposter syndrome completely sticking its head out, which I was at a conference last week, and there was a psychologist, Amy Cuddy. She did the...
oh, I love her.
She did the body language, I say as I spread my arms out. She did the...
I'm gonna do it right now.
The power poses study.
I did that like my whole first year of grad school.
I did that all grad school.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was in the bathroom, you guys, just like...
yeah. That got me through some solid finance tests.
Oh my God, I know.
Okay. And I didn't realize this because I have such a, I don't want to say feminist view, but such a like female-focused view of stats and everything. But it's like 70 or 80%, a astoundingly high number of people deal with imposter syndrome.
Like, is it really 80? No.
Not women, but it holds true across the gender spectrum.
That's amazing.
So, like, and I will say, like...
You're not alone.
Well, and dudes rarely get, like, a pause, but this may be one of the things where we have to cut them slack. It's just they present it in a different manner than women do.
Well, sure.
So I thought that was fascinating. But it's one of those things where, like, everybody... And I want to know, here's where my brain went. I want to know, out of the 20% that don't deal with it, what percent
are narcissists?
Yep.
I didn't even say that right because I was going to get it before you said it. Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, we both thought the same thing at the same time.
So
fascinating. I love it. Oh, my God. I love when stats make me think.
Yeah.
I really like, you know what I really like with stats is when I look at one and I'm like, no, you're totally manipulating that.
Yeah.
Like, you 5x'd it, was it 1 and now there's 5? Or, I mean, that can mean radically different things.
Yeah. Oh, my favorite is when people just give you percentages, but they don't give you the N. I may have
an N of 2.
I may have just spent 2 weeks tracking down a single N.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I bet it was it like a capital N? No, because that's population.
I know. I'll tell you. I'll tell you later.
An N of 1. Fascinating.
No, not an N of 1, but I was reporting on some stuff.
Oh.
And it was information from another report. So it was broken out into like generations. And the total like amount of subjects was like 10,000, but broken down between X, Y, boomer, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I need to know. And then they reported on it that was the only number they gave, like 10,000.
Oh.
And then it was like 20% of millennials, blah blah blah, 10% of Gen Z, blah blah blah, all these things. And so as I was working on something, I was like, cool, so I can say this, but I don't know what these percentages mean. Like,
they don't mean anything.
So I was tracking down. I needed to get the breakout.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. It's the scientist in me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually doing a very brief presentation about the importance of handling your data appropriately next week.
For sure. Yeah. Don't lie with stats, people. Don't do it.
I mean, it's easy to do. We've all done it.
Well, sure.
Like, any marketer is made like stats look really good.
Everybody does it.
It's like house. Everybody lies,
right? I know.
But also don't just be honest.
Yeah, seriously.
Because there's knowledge in that honesty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, if this subset is significantly smaller, what are the reasons behind it? Just acknowledge it.
Just say that it was smaller for this reason, and it's a limitation of the research.
Mm-hmm.
Listed as a limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all.
But we don't want to put stuff out there that isn't perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
We think people are going to be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Right? Yeah. So again, imposter syndrome, and so we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So we either don't get started, or we get started using another method and then just stick with it because we're too anxious, scared of judgment, whatever you want to call it, to strike out on the thing we really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, that was marketing, but you were in your lane, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I'm not fucking getting out of this lane.
Mm-hmm.
But I really want to stop over at this weird scenic thing that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, fuck that, no.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you finally did it, it was magical.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be very, I can't talk today, rewarding. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody. It's late. To really, when you finally do step out and you get positive feedback and you're like, yes.
Well, and I think, having any sort of guidance for any sort of feedback, because sometimes stuff comes into play. Really, my first year after switching out of that program and stuff, I didn't get immediate positive feedback. The universe was like, "Oh, you want this? Let's see how bad you want it." But I think in terms of
tested. I agree.
In terms of professional growth and everything, sometimes the best feedback we can get are the things that seem the most not criticizing, but the most I don't know, the best feedback isn't always the great job. The best feedback we can get is when someone spends time and is like, this could be a better way. I'm not sure about this. Have you thought of this? Things like that, because that shows that they're invested in you, and there's this larger kind of group investment, because everyone wants whatever the product is, be it a report, be it, a service, everyone wants that thing to be as best as possible for the client or customer.
Right. And I was just going to say something. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So when you're out on like the growth edge, the bleeding growth edge, it can be hard to be out there for a long time because you are growing, but change is painful, right? Like you have this whole skill set, but you're not really, it's kind of on autopilot because you're like doing this thing and it's really like, oh, I can't do anything fucking right. Like this just keeps being a problem. Like I don't know anything. Like, right? It starts to feel that way when you're out there, like working towards growth and also very rewarding at the same time. So it's a very demanding place to be and doesn't always like, sometimes it's fucking crazy making. Like I don't even know how many times I've been sitting in, well, it would have been the other office, in your house, crying like, I shouldn't even be a psychologist. Like, fuck this. Like, I don't know anything. And like, you had to like talk me off that. But like, it feels that way.
Yeah.
It shakes you like to your core. You're like, I thought I knew so much. And really, I don't know if that's true. And so you need voices like mentors who can say, no. It's okay. You're doing fine. You're learning and you're growing and you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you have this whole skill set back here. And don't forget about that.
Yeah.
Or, if, you know, a best friend could do it too.
Yeah.
But like, I had mentors like all through grad school and I found that I had two very, very different people. And one like approached clients in this way and the other one in this way. And they were like, could not be more dissimilar, but like I was able to like integrate them together along with how does this fit into my worldview? So I started practicing probably more like one and then tried to incorporate the other. And then you keep going and then you put in your stuff too. And then you kind of get this mix and that comes out really good. And hopefully for me, it did. It was good, but sometimes not. So that's why mentors are really important because they're there to be guides. They're not necessarily there to tell you what to do, right? But like to provide guidance.
Well, and I think also if we think about the training cycle, being a mentor kind of really at any point in your career or in your educational journey can be so beneficial. Like, I think even like us first year grad school could have taught sophomores so much.
Oh my God. So yeah. Okay.
You know, so like no matter.
We thought we knew so much. We're like, how hard could grad school be? Like, we're good students.
So like we were learning from the fourth years and we could have really provided guidance to folks that were getting ready to apply.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think really no matter where you are, you have that space to show your experience and expertise to kind of like the generation or the folks that are coming after you. And, you know, we were talking about imposter syndrome, and as like selfish as it sounds, being a mentor can really show you what you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, because like you do not realize how much you know about something until you start explaining it to someone that has no idea.
I mean, haven't we talked about that like a lot of times? Like, you know how well you know something when you try and teach it to other people.
Like, I mean, I knew that I knew my industry. Like, I felt pretty solid in my level of knowledge. And then I was explaining it to someone pretty recently. And I was just like, oh God, I know this way too intimately. I was like, okay, hold on.
I remember you asking me something and you're like, I wonder who runs that gift card program. I'm like, who cares? You're like, I care.
I care.
But yeah, so being a mentor, because like in my field, it's a little bit more explicit because you provide clinical supervision and oversight. And so like when the new interns come in, right? And I am wherever I am in my career, I can also help mentor them because it helps you realize like I was in that place too, and how much I've grown between then and now, which provides kind of guideposts to lead them along the way. But still, it's like a framework with them doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. And we say that all the time. Like, we're never going to make $1 million because we say we provide you a framework, but we don't do details.
I'm going to change what we say. It's not that we're never going to, we'll never make $1 million. We got to make 2 because there's 2 of us.
But it's not like, it's not the 3 ways to be like a millionaire.
Right.
It's not the 7 steps to business success.
Yeah.
And that is why sometimes therapy is harder than people think it is, because we provide a framework, but we expect the client to like provide the details and the context and all of that. Because really, here's the true thing, that I have a lot of expertise to offer, but they are the expert on their own lives. And so to the degree that anything they take in from me helps with that, that's the work. Right? So it's not just like me saying, oh, go do these 3 skills. Like that's like anyone could do that. Like you could get that off a webpage. Like it's stupid.
Yeah.
So it's really about that interaction of like, how does this incorporate into your life and all those details from the client? And it's like that in business too.
Yeah. I was just thinking like marketing strategy, like I could know so many of the latest and greatest marketing strategies, but these brands and businesses, like they know their customers more. And so
than you ever could.
Yeah. So strategy A, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. It may fall flat depending on the customer.
Right.
You know? Which really draws back to this whole idea of relationships and this give and take. You know, there's the therapeutic relationship, business relationship, there's no, it's never a one-way street.
No. Right. So it's that interaction effect that drives me crazy when I try and explain it in statistics, but it's like a real thing. And it can be hard. It's hard to do that work. It makes you feel vulnerable. It makes you feel incompetent at times. But like, that's where the growth is. That's how you learn and get better. And like the thing I was thinking of too is like, you and I did the same, I cannot talk today. What is wrong with me? We did the same MBA program and we both had the same classes, but your knowledge and skill and ability with marketing is very much advanced compared to mine. So you can't discount experience because it makes you more of a wealth of knowledge and better able to implement things that I also know about. You know what I mean? So like, again, that speaks to the expertise piece, the what part of this am I owning and putting out to the world piece. Because I'm like, hey, if you want to know marketing strategies, I know XYZ. Like, I did an MBA program, but like, that's not really what it's about.
Well, and those are theories, not strategies.
Right?
Like,
I know. So
big eye roll. Jeez, Tammy, get it together.
Wow, that tells you how little I know, which is kind of terrifying because I have an MBA. But honestly, but then like, yes. So you got my point. Now you threw me all off. I'm not saying anything anymore.
No, but
I know more psych than you.
No, but I mean, I think that speaks exactly to what we've been saying,
right?
You know, like it's both. It's knowledge, because all the strategies that I implement are driven by theory. Like you have to have that understanding of basic theory and understanding of
same with psychology.
I was going to say how like the brain works, because both things are all about the brain.
Ours is totally, I figured this out last time, is that our podcast is like the evidence for like that cognitive theory that's about nodes activating. Like we are like evidence for that.
Yeah. We totally are.
But these are like the nerdy things that go through my head. But anyway,
it speaks to, you have your own expertise, and being aware of that is key so that you can acknowledge and utilize the other experts that are around you.
Right.
Be it in a mentorship role, whether you are a mentor, you get a mentor. Both can be true. You can be a mentee and a mentor.
Yes.
That is completely possible. Like,
well, because no matter where you are in your journey, there are people higher and lower. If you want to think of it as being in a straight line, which it isn't anyway, but we won't get into that. But there's always going to be people with more experience, more expertise, and there's going to be people with less. And so how do you mentor those with less? How do you learn from those who have more?
Yeah. And I think I will say, if you haven't spent time kind of like being a mentor or a leader to someone, like, try to figure out a way to do it. It's fun, and it's kind of like you got to give back because
Yeah.
people have spent so much time investing in you to get to where you are that
Well,
you
it's like
know.
compassion, right?
Yeah.
I think being a mentor is kind of like the embodiment of living your life with compassion.
Mhm.
And like, I can't focus anymore. Your cat is just too much. But it's like, what was I saying?
Mentor compassion.
Oh yeah, it's like living your life with ultimate compassion because
Mhm.
there's this recognition that people may need you and you give that freely,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
it is kind of for me like how to live with compassion.
Yeah.
Because I acknowledge that's not everybody's worldview and that's fine, but like it's something that's a huge value for me. And
Mhm.
so that's just how I conceptualize it.
Mhm. All right.
Really?
What?
You're like, okay.
No, I mean, I think that's a good place to end.
No, I think so too.
Because I mean, we talked about like the selfish gains, like it'll show you that you know more than maybe you think, and compassion is always a valid reason to do anything. So,
Learn to tie shoes, everyone.
yeah, I'm curious. Let us know how you guys tie your shoes because apparently it's a very hot topic.
Send video.
Yeah. Okay. That's all for this week, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Bye, friends.
Bye.